Beats. Welcome to the State Board of Education meeting for the month of November, and as I said yesterday, I believe time's getting away from us. It is almost 2023. For our invocation, inspiration, and to lead us in the pledge, I'm going to ask Ms. Benepetti if she will introduce our speaker this morning.
Good morning, board. Good morning, visitors. Thank you for being here. I have the honor this morning of introducing a friend and not a colleague, but somebody that I cross paths with a lot. He is a product of public education in Georgia. He graduated from Dalton Public Schools, went to the University of Georgia, went to Terry School of Business and Georgia Law School. He was an alderman in Dalton, and later became a senator for the 54th. I don't work by notes, so I just have to get up and talk, so sorry. And is now on the Georgia Supreme Court. I could talk about a lot of things that he does, but what he is most well known for and loves to be known for is that he is the husband of Lindsay. He is the father of Henry, Jeb, and Joanna. One's a sophomore in college, and one in high school, senior in high school. And Joanna is a senior in elementary school. So at this time, I give you Justice Charlie Bethel.
Thank you, Fenna, very much for the invitation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Superintendent Woods, for giving me the opportunity to speak to this body. Fenna, in introducing me, my favorite term is neighbor. So Fenna is a neighbor, and those of us who live in the 14th Congressional District are fortunate to have your voice here in this body representing us. I know I'm supposed to do the pledge. I'm supposed to do a word of inspiration, and then I'll close with what hopefully will be an opening prayer for a productive meeting for you. I do want to note that I am the son of a 26-year Board of Education member for the Dalton Public Schools. So my grandfather on the maternal side would have been, I hope, proud that I had an opportunity to speak with you. And I'm sure he would have had eloquent notes about what you ought to be doing. But he's not here, and I am. So I will start with the pledge, then I'll say a few words, and then we'll do our prayer. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I will not require anyone to publicly attempt the pledge to the Georgia flag. Any takers in here? I will note that for my days in the Senate in Georgia opens each day of the session with the pledge to the Georgia flag. The House, of course, does not, for the sole reason that the Senate does. You're not required to have some things we disagree on. But you will remember the Georgia pledge after today because it is extremely short and encompasses our motto. I pledge allegiance to the Georgia flag and the principles for which it stands: wisdom, justice, and moderation. That's easy. That's short. And it's a mouthful if you're going to try to live it. So as I wrestled with what to say to this body that might be of inspiration, my mind sort of tied back to remarks that I generally give when I speak to school students of various ages. And we sort of ramp up and down the vocabulary, but the message is often very much the same. And I'm going to give you an iteration, hopefully a short one that stays within my time limits, of something that I call the get about value and be a value conversation. To do that, I'm going to start with a reference to a story from my faith tradition. The Gospel of Matthew contains a very well-known and famous parable, the parable of the talents, chapter 25, verses 14 through 30. Familiar to many of us, but for those who may not be familiar, this is a story about a wealthy landowner who is going away on business and entrusts three individuals with varying degrees of economic responsibility. A talent was a large sum of money. So 5 talents for one, 2 for another, and 1 for the third. And upon return, the landowner wants an accounting of what's been done. And you're familiar, most of you, with the story. The one who got 5 had put it to work and doubled the money, and the landowner was pleased. Enter into your master's joy. Same for the one who had 2, and then there's the one who had 1, who sailed close to harbor, who took what perceived to be a safe path and chose to bury the resource, only to return it just as it had been entrusted to him. And the master's not pleased. Now, there's a lot there. There's a whole lesson of Sunday school that we could go into if we needed to that day, and we could talk about how the original audience would have maybe wrestled with the issues like how neither a borrower nor a lender be would play into a world in which you were being encouraged to invest and perhaps place on deposit. But that's not what I want to focus on. What I would like to focus on is the surface level meaning. And that is the notion that with which we are entrusted, we are accountable for using. And so when I talk to students on a regular basis, I talk to them about the world we live in divides people in so many ways, most of them unhelpful, and most of them cause pain. One that I have observed in my years working in the carpet industry and elsewhere is what I call the get a value, be a value division. There are people in the world who engage with others, engage with the world, with the mentality of getting a value. Now, I'm not talking about coupon clipping. I'm not talking about, being a bargain shopper. I'm all for that. That's a good idea. That's how the market works. But I mean folks who say, I am going to give the minimum to get what I'm entitled to. If somebody's paying me $10 an hour for a job, they are not going to get anything more than I have to do to get my $10. They are engaging with the world in a get a value mentality. And then there are those that are be a value people. These are people who look at it and say, if someone's paying me $10, there will be no one who gets more benefit from their $10 than they get from me. I am going to be a value to the people I live with, work with, and engage with on a daily basis. We need a lot more be a value people in our society. And so as I speak to you in this organization, in the organizations you touch, in your families, in your churches, in your communities, my encouragement is to be an evangelist for be a value thinking. Look for opportunities to encourage people who are trying to add value. It is very common to overlook. We get comfortable with get a value thinking. It's safe. It checks all the boxes on our list. We are close to harbor and we don't take risks. And we never expand and get the full value of the talent that was entrusted to us. It goes on from there, but I'm on a time limit, Mr. Chairman, and I'll wrap it up by saying this. I have a sophomore in college, I have a senior in high school, and a senior in elementary school, as my 5th grader likes to refer to herself. I am thankful that you and countless other people invest in what they are doing and who they are becoming. The task of getting it right is beyond imperative and beyond possible for any one of us. But if we take the talents that have been given us and invest them wisely, I believe we can deliver a Georgia to them that's worthy of the one that was delivered to us. And so with that, I'd ask if you join me in a word of prayer. God, who is sovereign despite our desire for control, I give thanks for the people that are gathered here, people who give of themselves in the interest of providing an education and all of the related opportunities that brings to the next generation of Georgians. And where we work to impart knowledge, God, I ask that you let it grow into wisdom. And where we spend our time making and enforcing rules, I pray that you would cultivate a heart of justice in the people we serve. And while we fight and scream to be heard, I pray that you would give us the desire to hear contrary perspectives, that we may enjoy the balance of moderation. And when all of our tasks feel hopelessly immense, I ask that you would remind us that you only call for us to employ the talents with which we've already been entrusted. These things I ask in the name of my Savior, Christ Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. We appreciate those words of wisdom and hope that we can continue to be of value as opposed to get a value. And at the end of the day, hopefully we can impart upon the students of the state of Georgia to be a value and not just get a value. So thank you for that. That was great. I want to introduce some other special guests we have with us today. I've been presented with a list. If I omit you, once I've read the names out, please stand up and let us know who you are and where you're from. But from GSBA, we've got Justin Pauley with us. Hey, Justin, how you doing? From Foothills, we have Dale Simpson, Bonnie Knight, and Sherry Gibney Sherman. See everybody back there. From Mountain Ed Charter High School, we have Roger Fitzpatrick. How are you, sir? We've got Claire Buck from GASIS. Claire. Matthew Smith from Georgia Partnership for Excellence in Education. And we've got Tina Ingberg and Beth Haynes from Decoding Dyslexia, Georgia. Have I missed anyone from the list that came in late? Call you out for coming in late. I'm kidding. Sure. Hey, Shanna. Good to see you. Thanks for coming. Anybody else? All right. Well, let's begin building our agenda, and I will start with budget. Mr. Scott Johnson, I believe you have budget. Do you have some items we need to pull?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to move, Budget Committee would like to move items 1 through 6 to the consent agenda.
Very good. Items 1 through 6. Thank you, sir. We will move on to Rules Committee. Ms. Petty.
Yes, item 1 was pulled from the agenda, so there's nothing on that one. Item number 2 will be moved to the consent agenda. Item number 3 is being pulled and will be addressed during the chair's report. And item number 4 has been pulled for a separate vote.
Okay, so item 1 is pulled from consideration. 2 will go to consent agenda. 3 is pulled, and we'll discuss that during the chair's report, and then a separate vote on 4. Good. Right, we turn to district flexibility and charter schools. Mr. Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have one item, and item number 1 has been moved to the consent agenda, and that concludes the report.
Very good. All right, are there any other items, let's see, that we need to place on the consent agenda at this time? Leonte, do we have a report from you today?
Good morning, everyone. Individual student waivers, the minutes of the September 28th, 2022 executive session, the minutes of the September 28th and 29th, 2022 state board meeting, the November 2022 personnel report, and the November 2022 legal report.
Very good, sir. We'll move those to the agenda as well. Did we have any action items from audits, Mr. Royal?
No action items, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And from state schools, Ms. Kennemore, are there any action items?
No action items, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Is there anything else for the good of the board that we need to place on the consent agenda? All right, hearing none, we will take a 10-minute recess to allow the consent agenda to be built. Let's reconvene at 9:30. All right.
to academics.
Dennis said, yeah, loud to get your all's attention, and it worked, so I'm gonna start banging the gavel louder for Ms. Petty. All right, the consent agenda has been built, and you all have had an opportunity to take a look at it. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, Mr. Sweeney?
So moved.
Second.
A second, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes. Now,
It's actually the approval of the agenda.
approval of the agenda, yes,
Not the consent
because we want to do it by the book. And I've been told that technically it hadn't been, although there's some disagreement, that's okay. All right, so now would you like to offer a motion related to the agenda and the items on it, Mr. Sweeney?
Mr. Chair, I make the recommendation that we approve the consent agenda.
Very good. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, passes. Mr. Sweeney, is that good? All right, all right. We will continue to move down the agenda, and there was an item that was pulled for a separate vote, and that is under Rules Committee. And that is item number 1 under E, TL Standards, Georgia's K-12 English Language Arts Standards. Ms. Petty, you have some comments on that before we have, I believe we have a presentation.
I think that, do you have a presentation?
We'll give them a second to load it. Well, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Personally, I was glad we started off with my favorite book in the Bible, Matthew. But today I have the pleasure of giving a ELA update. I know it's been a long time coming, but we've made it here today for this stage of the standards review process. I want to give a shout out. We met with these two groups of people in late October. We pulled back together as part of the process. Of course, we know after the teacher working committees convened, we have an academic review committee, and we had a good representation on that from school districts and also post-secondary. DeKalb was on that as well. Ms. Helen Rice from the state board was on that, and also we had representation from the governor's office. Also, the Citizens Review Committee, and these are appointed by the governor and superintendent, made up of, we had a student on the committee as well as parents, concerned citizens, people with a business background, people that are in city and county government as well, grandparents, former superintendents, so a good representation. The feedback that we got, general feedback, was very positive, so we felt comfortable, Superintendent Woods felt comfortable with moving forward with the process, which today your vote is to vote on just posting these for public comment. You're not voting to adopt the standards, but to post them for public comment so that all Georgians have a chance to weigh in on the draft ELA standards. Some feedback that we did receive is they really appreciated the learning progressions, and I'll kind of show you what those are in a minute, but a lot of time and thought went into those progressions so that teachers can really see where kids need to be, grade level expectation, but if a student is struggling, what's the prior knowledge they were supposed to master the grade level before, and if they need to accelerate learning, what does that look like as well. There was a more emphasis and unpacking of cursive writing. That's something we heard from the Citizens Review Committee, so we wanted to respond to that. We wanted to make these standards more accessible. We heard that from our survey that we gave at the very beginning of this process. If you're a beginning teacher, or if you're a teacher that's new to ELA, or if you're just a parent and you want to know what your child needs to be able to know and do, we want to make sure that academic language are not artificial barriers for that involvement or that understanding. So a lot of work went into making the language and the standards as accessible as possible. And then the last bullet on here, which I think ties to a presentation y'all received last month, is just adding kind of a new group of standards to really focus on that literacy piece around the phonics, phonemic awareness, to structured literacy piece. So having a more intentional focus on that piece so kids have a firmer foundation of those fundamental literacy skills so they can be more successful as they move out of the K-5 area. I want to say thank you to our first, Dr. Caitlin Dooley. She leads our teaching and learning team at the Georgia Department of Education. April Aldridge, which I believe she's been on her new role about 10 days. So look what I talked her into. But April Aldridge, she's from Decatur County. She's leading our curriculum and instruction team. And if you don't know where Decatur County is, if you go any further south, it'll be in Florida. She definitely understands the southern part of our state, the rural part of our state. And of course, Brianne Hudson, who is our program manager, she heads our ELA team, which you see up here. I'm going to let Brianne kind of briefly introduce them. They're not with us today. They're actually doing trainings. They're with Reese's, they're with school districts, so they're on the ground supporting our ELA teachers. But Brianne is here today. I'm going to allow her to come up very briefly and introduce the team.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here this morning. I'm excited to be here while you have the opportunity to hopefully vote to post these for the public to let us know what they think. I am Brianne Houston, and I am honored to be able to introduce you to the photographs of our wonderful ELA team. They are doing trainings. Kelly Iverson is our special education and ELA specialist. She is joining us from Henry County. She was a professional learning specialist there. Asha Jasani is our ELA and ESOL specialist, and she spent time in DeKalb County, and she is also a Harvard graduate, and so we are really appreciative of what she's bringing from that lens. Dina Oglesby is our new elementary ELA specialist. She was involved in this process as a facilitator and a leader, and then she has joined us recently as our elementary specialist. And Sarah Welch is coming from Fannin County. She wore all kinds of hats in Fannin County, and she's here as our secondary specialist. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Britt.
I'll just say something with Brianna, because at the very first, when Lisa and I tried to log on, that was the first time that I had a chance, didn't really get to meet you, but we got to see that you were structuring everything for the timeline with the groups that were meeting. I know it was a little hectic at first, and we got things kind of worked out, but these women that are on your team, I had really hoped that we could have them speak, because once we went to move from elementary to middle to high school, and the group looked at the standards, I was so impressed with your work. I knew that you had your hands on those standards, that you knew what you were talking about. And when people said, have you thought about this with a progression, or have you thought about how great the phonemic awareness and things were in K through 5, she immediately, and I'm looking at my notes of that day, but that was Andina. Yes, and how that thread, and then that 5th grade to 6th grade when we went into middle school. And so many of the things that I've listed here, as I had a chance to briefly look at them, because we got them on Tuesday and Wednesday, yesterday, I noticed that you did take some of the things that were already said at this meeting and went back and worked it into the standards. That's what I was hoping today, and I'm sure, Matt, you're going to hit some of that, but these women with that team, with Caitlin Schott, where is Caitlin?
She's right there.
Oh, yeah, I can't see. I mean, I missed, yes, and I see April too. That was the first time I had just heard you in a conversation, didn't really know, but I did know that you came in on October the 13th. So, but as I said to Jason, the depth of your knowledge was very evident, and the time that was put in there was so evident. And I'm just sorry, thank you for being here. I'm sorry that these women aren't here for us to really see them and hear from them and get a little feed of how they navigated those meetings and listened and talked. So please tell them that, how much we appreciate that. And I know, Caitlin, you'll get that out to your team. I'm sorry, Matt, go ahead.
No, absolutely. I appreciate those comments, Helen. And they did. They put a lot of work into making sure we have the best product for our students and teachers. So just to briefly kind of touch on the structure and the process itself. The first piece of this, and I know this seems like quite a while ago, we did our public feedback survey. Then we had our citizens review, and just like with math, we have that facilitated by the Carl Vincent Institute. We've kind of heard similar feedback to these standards as we did with our math standards. And then we did bring 300 teachers together virtually So that was a task. I'm glad the ELA team's still talking to me after that. But that went really well, and we were able, because it was virtual, not pull teachers out of the classroom, because we were really focused on keeping learning going, particularly as we were coming out of the pandemic. But also we were able to get a wider representation of teachers across the state participate in that process. And then on the 24th, in the same day in the morning, we had the academic review committee. And then Helen, of course, was a part of the citizens review that afternoon. Where we are now in the process, the superintendent is recommending for these standards to post for public comment. And then we'll pull together that public comment. If we need to respond to some things, we'll definitely do that and come back and repost. If we feel like we've hit the mark and Superintendent Woods feels comfortable, then we'll work to move those standards forward. And then after that's the implementation. The implementation timeline, and the superintendent's been very kind of firm on making sure we get this right and being attuned to the math standards as well, is we're in about the middle of the school year. So looking at once these standards are approved, the rest of the school year and then all of next year, working on instructional supports, that's professional learning, resource development, the milestones getting updated to match these new standards, doing field tests of new items. And then for the 24-25 school year, that's when the standards will kind of, quote, hit the classrooms for them to be fully implemented. And we'll have the updated assessments to match the standards. And we'll continue the support. The support and resource development, professional learning won't stop once these standards are fully implemented. That will continue, but we have about 1.5 years of training, professional learning, and resource development to make sure our teachers are prepared for these standards. The domains, so we tried to keep this as consistent as we could across K-12. So we have, for K-5, we have foundations, which I mentioned is kind of unique to that elementary, that foundational literacy piece. Then we have language, practices, and text. For 6-12, we keep the same domains, and I'll kind of tell you what a domain is in a second. But we wanted to try to be as consistent as we could across K-12. But we also knew in that K-5 area, we heard from our citizens review, we heard from our teachers as well, is we needed that more intentional focus on those literacy skills, so we added that domain there. So a domain is just kind of the broad category of standards, and then we have big ideas to kind of help break that category up. And then we have the standards themselves, and for these standards, we organize them by grade band. So there's K2, 3, 5, 6, 8, and 9, 12. And then the expectations break down the standards. You know, one of the pieces of the feedback we've heard in the past is the standards are too vague. So the expectations try to really unpack those standards in a progression so teachers know where to start with students and where they need to get to master the standards. So all the standards documents start with that cover page to tell you what domain you're looking at, and then there's an overview. It tells you what domain you're looking at, what are the big ideas, the standards in that section, and then after that, you start seeing the standards themselves really start to be unpacked. We wanted to use the same format as math, so this is the same format as we did with the K-12 math standards. You see the big ideas are in green at the top. The standard is blue, and then the grades go across. So this is a K2 grade span, and then the expectations are broken out for teachers. So you can see where you got that general standard at the top, and then teachers really kind of see underneath what does that mean, not only for the grade level they're at, but they can kind of see what students needed to learn in a prior grade and what they'll be learning in the next grade. And it's all in one standard document. If you were to do this today, you would have to print out all these different PDFs of different standards, different grades, try to link them together, and hope you're linking them together the way they were intended to be. And so this group did this for teachers, so hopefully teachers can focus on meeting the needs of their students. Learning progressions are built in. You can see across, you can see this is a learning progression for cursive writing. So you can see what does that look in 3rd grade broken out, what does it look in 4th grade, what does it look in 5th grade, and they all align. So if you go across, you can kind of see that bar raised higher, that expectation raised higher. So if you're a fourth grade teacher and you're looking at the cursive standard, you can see, what does my fourth grader need to be able to master? If they're struggling at that, you can see immediately, what were they supposed to learn in third grade? And how do I backfill maybe some skills that they didn't master so they can be on grade level? If you have a student that already gets it and you want to accelerate that student, you can already see, what are they going to learn in fifth grade on this expectation? And you can push that student even higher so they can be more successful when they get to the next grade. And the same progression goes downward as well. So if you look within that fifth grade expectation, it goes to the I would hate to say easiest to hardest, but it builds those skills as you move down the progression. So this is kind of a game changer. We haven't done this before in our standards, but we hope doing this as part of the standards process means that districts don't have to do this themselves. And it also makes sure there's no holes in the standards where one concept shows up in one grade, then it's dropped a few grade levels, it doesn't pick back up until another grade. So we think this standards, this learning progression is going to be a real benefit for our students and teachers. Now, it looks kind of easy, but you can imagine it's like putting together a 1,000-piece puzzle to make sure all these pieces fit together in a logical order. And it doesn't work from the grade span. We tried to line these progressions up K through 12 across the standards. So that was it of my presentation. I would say that, kind of referring back to our speaker, he mentioned the parable of Matthew and staying near the coast versus venturing out and reaping more rewards. I really feel like with these standards, and I hope you agree, that we did go out and try to do something that we thought was new, just not in the sake of doing something new, but something we thought were better for our students. And I think, Helen, you've said it well. I think we've made a huge step in the right directions for our teachers and our students in our state. What y'all are voting for today is just to post it. We'll respond to any feedback that we've received, just like we responded to feedback from the Citizens and Academic Review. Nothing is ever going to be perfect, but we want the very best standards for our students. And I think you'll agree that this is a huge step in the right directions for our students and our kids in our state.
Matt, how are you gonna communicate out so people know? I mean, obviously, we put our minutes out, all that kind of stuff, but how do you communicate out so that the maximum number of people can take a look at these standards during this 30-day period?
Yeah, so we have a press release as soon as we get a formal go-ahead. We have a press release ready to go. We also plan to send it out to superintendents, principals, teachers as well. One thing that we've learned through the $125 classroom supply grant is now we have teacher contacts across the state, so we can push information like this to all of our classroom teachers, so we can make sure all of our classroom teachers get this as well. And of course, we'll share this with the board so y'all can make sure you share it with your contacts. So I would say on the communication front, we try to communicate as much as we can, but I think we're in even a stronger position now because really our barrier has been reaching the teachers because we don't have their contacts, but since we've gone through that, now we have up-to-date emails for, I would say, almost all the teachers in the state of Georgia, so we'll make sure they get that.
Matt, let me say, that was a great question, Martha, because that has been a concern, especially with the having to post this so quickly and having time, because teachers, this week of the holiday is a downtime for them. It's certainly not a time that we can expect them to do anything. And right now, they're trying to end the semester. I know that you already have had some conversation Monday and Tuesday before our meeting with some RISAs and other people in the field. And I guess that was what I have always been saying is, like you were talking about accountability, I've just always been saying, for the teachers and to get the best that we can, sometimes rushing is not what we need. If we had some time to really filter it out there so that we could go to our districts and they don't feel rushed. I mean, a teacher right now has so much going on that for us to go back and say, hey, can you look over this and get back with me? And it's not even 30 days, it will be 30 days, but they won't have that. I just want to make sure that we do touch those, because a lot of teachers have not seen them with that memorandum that you have them sign that they can't go back to their systems right now. They have not been able to go in and talk. The 300 did. they knew, but the other thousands. So for us to be able to pull that together, it was so good. As I said yesterday, I text Jason, this group needs to hear from these people. They need to see how they navigated what we went through and what we talked about and the depth of what is out there. And so we're gonna post them. But our posting rate of getting responses has not been great as we've asked, as you know. So, Martha, I hope that somehow, but the time, I'm just so concerned for our teachers that I know in the classroom when I've got a holiday, it's gonna be with my family. I'm not gonna be sitting there trying to do this for Helen Rice because she asked me. So we've got to be mindful of that and mindful of what we're really doing. So
I want to make sure that y'all know we're committed to get it out. We want a high response rate, but I'll say sometimes that you get a higher response rate when people have concerns with things. I think we, at a similar time period, we were discussing EOC weight during the pandemic. And even though it was about the same time of year with the holidays, we got a very high response rate from people on that, because that was an issue that they had some deep opinions about. So we want to get it out. We'll make sure teachers get it, principals, RESAs. I know you'll share it with your networks. And we want the highest response rate possible. But I also think, if people have some deep concerns, I don't think Georgians are at the faint of heart with sharing those concerns. And we want to make sure we respond to those concerns.
Stan.
Matt, I have a format question, just for Helen while I understand. Could you back the slide up to the one on cursive writing, 3, 4, and 5, that one right there?
Mm-hmm.
Is the fourth grade expectations, is the color, it's different, right? Is it gray? Is that just for readability?
Just for reading.
Okay, so it's just to differentiate, okay,
Yeah.
so there's no implication that, okay,
Yeah,
all right.
there is teaching cursive in there though.
Oh, yeah.
It's just
Right.
easier to read when
Yeah.
it's three
Instead
different,
of
that's
having just
fine.
a complete blank white, black
Yeah.
background, this just helps
Okay,
separate.
great, all right, well then, to Helen's point, Helen, I share your concern about this with the holiday coming, but I also am very mindful that there's no perfect time to do this. And the longer we wait, the closer we're getting into preparation for testing, and there's just a whole lot going on in school districts after the holidays. But I do know, and Dr. Buck and Dr. Aldridge and Dr. Downs, I'm looking at you. I know they're going to be really involved in getting this messaging out to English language arts supervisors and teachers and everybody else. So I'm comfortable with the communication if we can get this posted. Personally, although I'm not in English language arts, that's not my background. I was a principal of a primary school for a little while, and I like the format. As long as I'm comfortable and I feel like that we're gonna hear from the field, and I wanna hear from the experts as well, that this is a step in the right direction, that we've improved the content standards, the quality, the scope and sequence is good. I've reviewed it the last 2 nights. I've had a chance to look at it. I'm very pleased with where we are, but I really look forward to getting the commentary. Matt, you're right. When people have concerns, they're more likely to respond than when they think it's fine. So I hope that those of us in the room will at least encourage our practitioners and our language arts supervisors to give us the thumbs up if they like it, and not just not say anything unless they have a criticism or a concern. So if they're happy with it, or in general, having led this kind of work at the district level, there is no way we're gonna make everybody happy, because I know from working with classroom teachers, first thing they look at is, where did my favorite unit go? Is it still there? Am I still gonna be able to talk about this in 3rd grade? Oops, it's not there anymore. Where'd it go? Is it in 2nd or is it in 4th? And I know we get all that, and that's a function of growth. That's just a function of the improvement. process. So, but overall, I like the format. I like the progressions. I really like the emphasis on the foundations. So thanks for all the hard work.
Matt, let me ask you this. It came up in our group several times, and I think, is there any way that there can be a crosswalk out there so that teachers, I know that would be helpful if they could see what was positioned where, and how so as they work on things too. And I know those units and in the scope and sequence, the units that are gonna be perfected and the time pacing charts and all that will be coming into focus too. And I think, in fairness to, I agree with Stan, in some of the groups, there were things that were highlighted. I think, April, y'all already know about some of the big idea things and some of the things as we jumped from 5th to 6th grade and 8th to 9th grade and tying in things with literature and comprehension. So there's some things that we really are, but the layout of this, as I said, I could tell there was some great work that went into that. And I'm just sorry. I liked hearing from you, Matt, but I really wanted to hear from those girls too, just to give them the kudos.
We put people at work at the DOE
Caitlin,
though, so.
That was
They're out training
outstanding.
teachers in districts, so, and I think they're probably gonna wanna put in for some leave after this process too. I don't wanna speak for them, but I'm waiting to see the approval for their leave request after these standards are approved. I think they'll probably wanna take a few days off, so. But thank you for today, thank you for this time.
Matt, just
Yes,
quickly,
Vanessa.
when they go to look at those, so like I said, the ones who have concerns are gonna report. Is there a counter inside that if they go, can we know how many people actually look?
Yes,
So
yes.
we'll know how many people logged in to look at the standards, and then we can compare
We'll know
them
how
to-
many, it's on a separate page, so we'll know how many visit that page, and then we'll know how many follow through on actually filling out. It's a very brief survey, but then there's a open response, so we can get detailed feedback from people that want to provide.
I don't know if it's gonna be as much concern as it's gonna be more detail of how to make it really the best the best of the best. You know what I'm saying? Because when you farm it out to what we're talking about, the ELA people, they're gonna spot. If you're a 5th grade teacher, you're gonna spot it. And collectively, they'll pinpoint things that can support it. So maybe supporting is better than saying it's so negative.
I've got a comment.
Oh my gosh,
No, exactly, because
I
I've been with Helen 12 years on this board, and we've always had a deal. I'll take math, you take curriculum, and we'll help each other out. I don't think I've heard in 12 years at this point, these standards are awesome, are really, really good. So these must be dang good. So,
a lot of work.
there is, but I'm just blown away over here.
I'm glad it's being recorded, so.
Poignant words.
Speechless.
Let's call the question.
Yeah.
Okay, let's quit while we're ahead.
Agreed. With those wise words from the vice chair, I'll wrap it up.
Next item.
All right, is there anyone else that would like to make any comments, have any questions? Ms. Kenmore?
I just want to say thank you to everyone that worked on these standards. Matt, you too. But thank you all for working on these standards. I've been reading through them, and I'm very impressed. And I look forward to hearing the the feedback that we get from the teachers and the parents and also the stakeholders across the state regarding these standards. And I do like the way that it's set up, where it's kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, and how they're able to look back and look forward and know exactly where they are in there. I really like that, and thank you for your hard work, all the ladies across the state. Men too, I don't know who. You too.
I know you saw those literacy things in there,
Oh, yeah.
in that K through 5.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
That's
the
good.
great plan for implementation.
And the phonics.
Plenty of time.
Yeah.
Coding.
Plenty of time.
All those things that build up reading.
Absolutely, and the cursive writing, threading that through, because a lot of young people, whenever they do something for me, I write them a note in cursive. I don't know if they ever can read it. So it's good, putting more focus on cursive writing too, as well.
right, any more comments, questions, concerns? So the item presented before us is to approve that the standards formally be posted for at least 30 days, but will be, I believe, 34 or 35 days technically. So that is what the action item is. Do I have a
Mr.
motion
Chairman.
to approve?
Motion to approve the standards?
Thank you, Mr. Mason.
Second.
I have a second, Ms. Kenmore. Any further discussion on this issue? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, they will be posted. Very good. We will move on to, I believe that concludes all the business. We'll move on to the superintendent's report. Okay, nothing to report. Very good. All right. I'll move on to the chair's report. Very briefly, I wanted to let everyone know why we did what we did with the bylaw that is to be amended. And I was advised by our legal counsel that formally at this meeting, we have submitted in writing that we plan to amend the bylaw. So it essentially has a 30-day wait period, and then we will formally vote on that in December. Just to remind everyone what that was all about, and we discussed it some, is taking the show on the road, so to speak, so that we can have, and the intent is not to have every meeting away from Atlanta, but it's to allow us to go out throughout the state, maybe have 1 or 2 meetings a year at other locations. Making use of our state schools, I think, is a wonderful idea, and that's sort of what I have planned for July. I'm going to email everyone on the board proposed meeting dates that I've been working with the department for our meetings, and they include a July meeting, a 1-day July meeting, which would be in Macon, at our state school there. So that's the process, and that's why that was pulled completely from the Rules Committee agenda, and I wanted to mention that in the chair's report as well. Does anybody have anything else for the good of the board? I know that there were some of us that attended the NASB conference. I mentioned a little bit about our grant that we received, but didn't know if anybody has any more thoughts or comments. I appreciate the involvement, getting back involved with NASB. I know we had traditionally had strong involvement and officers with NASB, and so I believe Matt Donaldson actually sits on the finance committee, and so he's jumped in feet first, and so we're proud of him for doing that. I know we've had some people who have been starting to schedule their public hearings. Ms. Kenway, did you have yours?
Yes, I did.
How'd it go?
It went well, and didn't have a big turnout, but I sent it to through the legal organ, and I sent out personal emails. But we had about 16 people there. Yeah, I have had a meeting where it was just me, Matt, and the principal. So it turned out well, and had some people speak at the meeting. So it was really good to be able to hear from the community members that came out to voice their pleasure and displeasure with the issues, and Matt got an earful that we were responding to. Yeah, so it was all good. And also, the three of us, Dr. Jornet, Mr. Sweeney, and I, we went to Bootstrap.
Right.
And it was great. And talking to the different superintendents from across the state and hearing their concerns, things that they were interested in, and just hearing from the different speakers. And Richard did a good job, and the department did their presentation. And hearing about safety, school safety, that was excellent from GMA and also from the federal department investigation. When they gave a presentation, it was awesome. Things that we need to consider in all of our schools across the state.
Well, I mean, Tiffany presented last week, I think, to a group on the dyslexia and what the start of the rollout was. And Tina, I think you attended, and one of the speakers is in this current Beacon magazine. And Tiffany she did a great job there. Maybe we can have her come and speak to us as a group too on some of the things that we're doing with the dyslexia rule. But I did get great, I'm sorry I couldn't go, but Tiffany, I heard lots of nice things about that. So thank you for that. Jason, maybe it's just me and the teacher in me, I'm sorry. You know, we have these old bylaws, and you know, I was asking Matt about a crosswalk to look at things. Can Jerry send out the old ones to everybody so that they can look at what is there and what has changed there? And, I don't know why that seems important to me,
It
but.
is important, because there's some details, there are some word changes that,
Yeah.
changes the whole
I mean,
dichotomy
it's-
of
Is there a red line version?
There's a red line version that should be,
But it's
if
not
it simply
exactly,
works. I don't know if it's working, but
I don't
it
think,
was,
well, of course, I'm not even gonna tell y'all.
user error, right?
We
Yeah.
can, I can.
We'll make sure you get it.
We'll get it.
Yeah, yeah, we'll make sure you get it. And I wanna remind everyone that you are required to have one town hall listening session, if you will, but it's basically in your committee, Mike.
I was just telling Martha, I've had like 3 and I've had 3 people show up out of all 3.
Yeah.
They were at one meeting, so the other 2, nobody showed up.
But my recommendation is to get ahead of that.
I had a big
because-
one, I had a big turnout at my
75.
last one.
That's great. That
Yeah.
might be a record, actually. And I know sometimes they're poorly attended. I think Matt had one in Metter, Matt Donaldson, and no one came. I mean, and sometimes that happens, and then sometimes you'll have 15 or 20, 75 people. That's
2 at most.
That's, yeah, 2 at your last one. But we're required to have those, and I think it's important to get out in front of it now, because you don't wanna get into the holidays and then the spring breaks, and then of course testing and all that, and then everyone's scrambling, oh, I didn't do one, and it's April, and that's kind of a problem. Mr.
Mr.
Johnson.
Chairman, yes, I did want to follow up on your comments about NASB, the National Association of State Boards of Education. Yourself, Mr. Mason, Mr. Johnson, I, and Mr. Capito were able to attend. I know everyone would like to, but of course, we all can't do the scheduling. But it is important for us to be involved in an association such as that, because every time I have attended, and I used to be on the board, secretary treasurer of the organization, but we learn what's going on in other states. All of us, state boards around the country are facing the same challenges, and in some cases fighting the same battles, and it is valuable for us to have the perspective of how they're doing it. Because we might say, we don't care how they do it in Michigan or California. Yeah, I mean, that's a funny way to say it. Yes, we actually do, because we learn from some of the things they are doing, and frankly, they're learning from us. I could tell you when the staff, particularly with NASB, said, we're glad Georgia's back, because you know, we've been known as a contributor to the organization, and I appreciate the opportunity to go, that we get to share what we know and learn what we can from others. And Mr. Capito did you mentioned it yesterday, did an outstanding job on the teacher, the educator panel that you might want to, if you don't mind, even need to share a few words about what you did at NASB.
Yeah, they randomly asked me if I wanted to sit on a panel for keeping great teachers in the classroom, which we all are passionate about, and that's part of the thing that was part of my platform, if you will, when I was going out for Teacher of the Year. But on the panel, there were 2 national experts on the data piece behind teacher pipeline issues, teacher retention issues, trends, and the things that we see in different generations. And some of the things that we scoff at about younger generations, but we actually need to adapt to, because that is the future. But being able to put some anecdotal evidence and some of the things from the teacher burnout report that we did in Georgia,
Yes.
with the data that we see in trends around the 50 states and the other territories, that was pretty powerful, I think, for a lot of the state boards around our country. And a lot of people came up to me afterwards asking, how did you guys in Georgia get these teachers together to create a report that is actually making action happen? How are you actually making a report and actually doing something about it at the same time? So we learned a lot. I know I learned a lot. There are some states that are doing some things in a way that we could learn from, but we actually got to teach some other states how to do things better too.
Yes, we did.
So that was really exciting to be part of that.
I know people came up to you afterwards, because I heard them complimenting and saying what they gained from your presentation and part of the panel. but they also came up to the other board members of us and say, wow, we're impressed with what's going on in Georgia and with your Teacher of the Year, Michael. So thank you for that.
Yeah, we had a lunch session because we were doing our training, and we did that all day Wednesday. So then we had a lunch session, which was with the main group, and Scott and I went back for the training, and I said, "Where's Michael?" And the woman that was leading the training, Megan, she said, "Oh, he's down with his strong of fans." I said, "Yeah, Michael comes back about 15 minutes later and said, "Where have you been?" He said, "Man, just everybody wants to talk to me. You're a celebrity, signing autographs." So Michael continues to do us proud and taking the show on the road nationally. So we're excited, and we had, I will say that people were excited that Georgia's involved again, but they're really excited about our Teachers of the Year and what they bring to the table. And not every board, but some boards have the ex officio member, the Teacher of the Year that actually sits by designation on the board. Now, I think I talked yesterday about how boards are different. Sometimes in some states, it's a hybrid. Some are elected, some are appointed. In some states, they're all elected. Like us, we're all appointed. But they thought it was really great that the Teacher of the Year sits on the board by designation as an ex officio member. So that was great. So thank you for that, and I'm glad we could do that.
You know,
Mr.
going
Long.
back, I was just thinking, I was gonna ask y'all if they did a human graph like they did when Kevin and I were in Washington. And it was so funny because of our different mindsets, different way of thinking. They said, "This is what do you think about this?" And you would continually move down the wall, and the people would move down the wall. And it was always funny. Way over here was a group, and there was Kevin and I way on this end. Hey guys, we're running by ourselves. And that generated itself conversation about the way we approached education and whatnot. So it was interesting.
Well, so the conference next year is in San Diego. But I mentioned to the director that we'd like to have them come back to Georgia. And in 2017, I think, it was in Atlanta.
Yeah.
I said, no, let's do it in Savannah.
Yeah.
So I think we're gonna make a bid to try to have the conference in Savannah.
So a few things. I'm on the conference planning committee.
Excellent.
I was on the conference planning committee for Phoenix. So that's already in the works.
Good.
So I'm glad you planted that right to Paulo then. As we were sitting here, I got an email from NASB. I'm now on the editorial board for the Standard. So I'll be reading, which I like reading all of their stuff ahead of time and being able to send comments back. But I wanted to mention one issue that came up during the NASB conference that, we've got it right, I think, and others are still struggling. And it is making adaptive changes in career tech pathways to meet industries. Okay, you think about how our system here and what Dr. Wall and her team have done for as long as I've been on the board. And I think that's something unique that, like, we are not thinking about how difficult that is. And I know Dr. Wall has thought how difficult that process has been. And she recently won an award. And so we should, I just want to recognize her. It really is the envy of many states because business keeps on coming here, and there's pathways that flourish because of that. So.
And Georgia has 4 finalists at the ACTE
Yeah.
later this month.
And also that economic development partnership that you're going around the different districts, that is gonna be a game changer. But Leonte and Dr. Wall were in Georgia Trends.
I saw that.
That's right.
Frank sent us that, and then I was sitting in at the bank, and I looked at it, I said, yeah, Kev, I know these people. Yes.
That sounds about
Congratulations to both of you.
So, and I think to your point about teacher retention, we are ahead of the curve on trying to work on that. But also what you said about Dr. Wall is that it is a retraining also of parents to think about those careers. We're retraining parents to think about CT, CA, and all of that we're doing. We're retraining parents to think about those pathways, but also we've got to do a better job of teaching as a career and talking about that throughout the time, because I don't know about you, but when I go around and do career days at schools and elementary schools, about half those kids say they want to grow up to be teachers. but it doesn't end up that way as time goes on. The little boys wanna be football players and the little girls wanna be teachers, and I don't mean to be overly, but that's the way it kinda shakes out when you're talking to a bunch of second graders. But what I think we've got to do is, while there is a money component, and I think that you see when we approve personnel and things like that, there is a big change if they move on into some kind of management or some kind of administrative, there's a big change in their salary, and a lot of people choose to go in that direction because of that. You don't blame them for doing that, but we've got to do a much better job at not only the salary part of it, which we've made a lot of progress on it, but the lifting up of the teacher and the job that they do, because it's an important job, and we have, like a lot of jobs in our society, we have devalued that over the last number of years, and we've got to really build it back. And I think we're doing a great job here in Georgia, but there's still a lot of work to be done.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to echo Ms. Kenmore's comments relative to the Bootstrap conference that we went to with GSSA and highlight the safety component. I can tell you that every superintendent that we engaged with is seriously looking at safety issues within our own systems. And one of the most telling things that I think we heard was that in regard to an active shooter situation, it's over in 4 minutes. And so the ability to thwart that threat before something like that occurs is so important, because the response, you're not getting the help there in time. And so every single district, there was incredible takeaways, incredible information that was shared, and I know that each and every one of our districts is actively working on that, and certainly with additional funding that's being offered, and that they'll put it to good use.
Go ahead. Kenneth, I was gonna mention that, I pulled up, I want to congratulate Dr. Wall on the Distinguished Leadership Award. Can't think of anybody more deserving. Not only is she an awesome leader, she cooks really great cheese straws. Hint, hint. Holidays are on the way, hint, hint. I've always told her the way to my heart's through my stomach, so. But no, we've got awesome leadership over there, and just wanted to congratulate, because she does understand that there are multiple Georgias. We were just in Jekyll and took part in, and great job again, Strong and everybody, but the pathways down there are very different than the pathways in Rome, and the pathways in Dalton, and the pathways in Savannah with transportation. It's similar to the gym, but we've got a very diverse state, and we've got to have a very diverse offering for those kids, and we do, and I think that's one of the main drivers of the increase in the graduation rate over the last 10 years. Has been kids have an opportunity, they see something that they want, see something on the other end for them. The pathways and dual enrollment have been keys to that graduation rate. But then also, Scott, on Echo and on school security, on a more somber note, we need to remember that the threats aren't just external. They're, unfortunately, and we heard from our state schools, internal. Our kids are dealing with a lot of things, and unfortunately, my home county has been in the news a lot, and not in a good way. And we need to remember that and keep that in our thoughts. How can we continue to support the mental health and mental well-being of these kids? They're hurting. They need help. It's hit home. The Brookwood, where I went, had an issue. Grayson High School, where two of my children went, has had an issue. But just seeing hitting home, and Archer High School, where my daughter now attends, has had a issue, and all of them have. And talking with my daughter about it last night at dinner, and some of the pictures from the last event were put on the internet, which should not be there, and those kids should not do that, but she saw them, and we had to talk about it at dinner last night. So it was not a pretty sight. So we've got to remember that not only do we have an external issues, there's internal, and we've got to do everything we can to help support the mental health and mental well-being of these kids as they go through this time. So.
True. Well, while we're throwing plaudits around, I was fortunate to sit on a panel Tuesday with Margaret Ciccarelli from Page and Tiffany Taylor from the DOE on, over the Georgia Partnership. And Richard, I know you know, you value the work that Tiffany does, but I just wanted to give her a public thank you. She always represents the department well. She's always very articulate about policy development and how it differs when you're at the DOE as opposed to with an advocacy organization and all that, but she really represented the department well. It's always a pleasure to be on the panel with her. I want to thank again all the people who did all the hard work on the ELA. I bet you were really gunned up for, and that's probably a poor choice of words, right? And I'm not being judged, but you were probably geared up for a much more robust discussion about this. Y'all deserve a lot of credit, because this, with all due respect to the math people that this is a big deal, and so credit to y'all for the work you've done. And then on just a personal note, last Friday we lost a great Georgian and a good friend of mine, and I don't know if you saw the in honor of on the smokestack across the interstate here, but I just wanted to send my sympathies to the Dooley family for the passing of Coach Dooley. Coach Dooley spoke to a lot of educator groups for a lot of years. He was always a big supporter of public education. His family's been a big supporter of public education. I had the good fortune to get to know him personally, and if you want a picture of an active learner all the way to the very end of his life, it's Coach Dooley. And their private family services today, and I think they're going to schedule a celebration of life at some point in the near future. But I just want to send my sympathies on behalf of my family to the Dooley family, and we're going to miss him.
And on a final note, we have 3 birthdays that are being celebrated this week. I find it random that we have 14 people on this board and 3 people have birthdays within 5 days of one another, which is wild. So I want to give a shout out to Stan, had a birthday on the 31st, and Finna, who had a birthday on the 31st. And then we have another birthday coming up tomorrow, Mr. Mike Long.
Yeah.
So happy birthday, everyone. It's so random that with 5 days apart, a 14-member board and 3 of you.
I have been dreading 37 for a long time.
There we go. All right. Anything else for the good of the board?
I just had a quick
Yes.
comment plug. Deanne, Karma, Jackie, and under Paige's leadership from the foundation, Georgia Foundation for Public Education, we just had our board meeting a few weeks ago. They're doing, you all go to the website, look at the Peachtree tax credit. Thank you, Finna. There's when we talk about innovation in schools, it's happening, and with that group's small leadership, they're doing some amazing things. So I won't take up more time there. Go to the website and let's spread the word throughout our state about that. The ability to be able to support schools through the foundation.
Right, and you've served on that board for a number of years, and then the budget committee chairman sits
Yes.
ex officio by designation, so Matt Donaldson is
Matt
the current.
Donaldson's-
I was a member for
Yes,
2 years
that's
when I
correct.
was budget committee chair.
Yeah.
We appreciate your service on that, and it's just a wonderful group, doing wonderful things.
A follow-up that I thought was pretty interesting, because, as you guys are gonna find out, and some other folks that have planned to retreat before, it's interesting that both my research directors, Greg Jacobs and Richard Smith, have already said, well, what we do next, what we doing next. So, it's, they loved hosting us, they loved having us down there. It's funny that I guess we're lifelong friends now with Tortuga Jacks. They're already asking when the next BORED meeting. That's a funny joke with them, because I always said, we know the State Board of Education, they all stood around the back of the kitchen going, BORED, yeah, board. But it's always lively there. But anyway, I think it was interesting that everybody's ready to host again already. I'm not, but.
Great. Well, and to that end, I have asked Finna and Martha to plan our retreat for next year. And so we did it at Jekyll for 2 straight years, and I thought we needed to go to the opposite end of the state. And so we're doing it at Brasstown Valley next year. And so Martha and Finna are planning that. We're gonna have a good turnout, may have a little golf, maybe we can get a ringer to come in and help, that'd be good, you know, but, it should be a fun time, and I appreciate the hard work that you put into this year's retreat, Mike.
Yes.
And wonderful, it was great, it was, I think everyone had a great time, and I'm looking forward to seeing what Finn and Martha do.
Jack.
No Tortuga Jacks, so,
Why not? No.
maybe we can get them to cater up there, so.
We do have a fire pit.
There's a fire pit,
There's a
okay.
fire pit.
And a
Inside,
sports park.
Sports, oh, there you go.
Inside, outside.
Hopefully the Braves will be in the World Series,
That's.
or playoffs at that point.
There you go.
All right, anything else for the good of the board? I will entertain a motion to adjourn at this time. Mr. Sweeney and a second from Ms. Kenmore. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.